this series we're doing, from my point of view, is rooted in what I would call three realms of experience. First of all, I have experience as a married individual, a married man. My wife and I have been married for 37 years, and she's not here today. She has our grandson. Our kids are out of town. So there's 37 years of that, and I wouldn't say it was all just wine and roses. We didn't have a textbook kind of beginning. We were living together before we were married. We weren't believers, we weren't Christians. And then we ran into Jesus, and at the same time, we sort of kind of had a quick conference on the mound of whether we should be married or not. We didn't have a lot of coaching. We didn't have any premarital classes. We didn't have anything. You guys, you have no idea how far ahead of the game you are. We didn't even have a really strong community to belong to. Everything was new to us. The church, Jesus, life, marriage. And so we had a rough few years getting started. You'll hear more about that if you come to the class. So my own marriage. The second realm of experience, if you will, has been working with people for about 31 years, people in marriages and so forth, with all that entails. And that's a long story. But it's shaped the way I think. I've been a very keen observer of human behavior. I like that. It's not all pretty, but I watch people and watch what they do, and I watch what it produces. I'm a very careful observer of human behavior. The third stream, if you will, is the Word of God itself. The Word of God. And I believe the Word of God is timeless. I believe it's relative to every culture in the world. It's relative to every generation. And it'll be here long. It will stand. It will be standing long after we're gone. I know there's things that are said, hey, marriage is failing and it's disappearing and the church or people are leaving the church. Listen, you'd be foolish to believe everything you hear. And so sometimes when people are trying to run their lives by some other philosophy, I am more than happy to listen to it. If you have another philosophy that will govern your life, your relationship, your marriages, your health, and all those things, I would love to hear what that is. But you have to be honest, though. Sometimes people tell me, I'm an agnostic. I say, okay, what kind of agnostic are you? Well, what do you mean? Say, are you an honest agnostic or a dishonest agnostic? Because by definition, an agnostic says, well, I'm just undecided because I haven't seen enough evidence. Okay, so when are you going to see enough evidence? See, you got to be honest. Which leads me to a story that I want to set this up with. This story didn't involve anybody in this church. These people don't live here. They're long gone. They've just passed through my life very briefly. They weren't from here. But it was quite a few years ago that a woman called me that was an acquaintance of mine. And she said, Pastor, my son wants to get married. And he's living with his girl. And they really want to get married. And they want to, here's the word I hear all the time, they want to do it right. And would you consider marrying them? I said, well, typically we don't run a marriage. I'm not in this to do weddings. I'm not a wedding singer or doer, anything like that. But I agreed to meet with them. And so it was, when we as pastors, we have a policy here at Church on the Hill that if you are going to be married, you want us to be involved as pastors. We have this obligation, if you will, to explain to you or ask some questions to make sure you know what you're getting into. Right? And so that's what I offered them. I said, look, I'm happy to talk with you. And so we met at this coffee shop downtown, and it was funny, when I try to stay away from the word counseling because it's like premarital counseling, but whenever guys hear counseling, they just, counseling, don't make me go there, and the woman shows up with a legal pad and a tape recorder, and she says, oh, counseling, yay, we get to do counseling. And so the guy's dying and the woman can't get enough, typically. And then on top of that, there's this couple that are unchurched, living with and they got to meet with this pastor guy, right? And so it's just always just incredibly awkward. So anyway, we show up at this coffee shop and we're just kind of making small talk, just trying to just kind of set him at ease. And how he's, hey, look, I have no dog in the fight here. You're the ones who are going to get married. I want to see you successful. So we're kind of talking, and we're about 15 minutes into the conversation, and I'm just about ready to get to the what I feel like is the important pieces. And the woman gets up and she goes into this bathroom in this coffee shop. And so he watches her go in. As soon as the door shuts, he goes, all right, look, man, I'm going to tell you something. And you can't tell her what I'm about to tell you. You can't tell anybody, but I got to tell somebody. And you got to promise me you're not going to. And I was just like, what's he going to tell me? And he says, look, I have a $100 a day cocaine habit. He said, I've been struggling with this thing for weeks. He said, and I've been an addict for years of my life, but I found a woman I want to marry and I love that woman and I'm going to kick this thing. But if she found out, it would break her heart and you can't tell her because I'm going to beat this thing and we got to get married and you're going to do the ceremony. And I'm just like trying to just process, like, and he's talking. And all of a sudden she comes out of the bathroom and just sits back down. Where were we? And, and one of those times, no lie, I've had these moments in my life where just like when you know, it's like the arrow prayer, help, God, you shot this prayer up into the heavens and this bolt of inspiration, no lie, this was from God. A question just came to my mind, immediately came to my mind. And it wasn't where I was going. And this question, I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being insignificant, 10 being extremely important to you, how important is honesty to you? And she didn't even miss a beat. She goes, 10. She lifts up both hands. 10. And then she preaches for like 7 minutes on why honesty is incredibly important to her. And it's a 10. It's a 10. It's a 10. And I look at him and he's just like staring at me, reaching for the handgun in his pocket. It's like, and honestly, it was the craziest moment. That moment, it shaped something in my mind. And I tell that story because I'm going to kind of segue into something I want to ask. You know, the fall of man, I believe there was a literal fall of man. I believe we were in perfect relationship with God back in the garden, and it was unhindered by sin, selfishness, and all the fruits of that. But when that fall happened, we moved to a place outside, east of Eden, if you will. And there's 2 characteristics of us, all of us, wandering east of Eden. And one of those characteristics is ignorance. Now, there's nothing necessarily wrong, I should say, with ignorance. There's nothing necessarily evil with ignorance. Everybody has some measure of ignorance, right? The older you get, when you're like 16, you know everything. Right. And then you're like 19, you're like, well, maybe I'm not sure. Maybe I don't know everything. And then you get to be about 50 and you realize I am an idiot. I know nothing. What I don't know far surpasses what I thought I knew. That's the more you realize I do not know. It's amazing what I don't know. And so ignorance isn't necessary, but ignorance can be a dangerous thing. This is why we don't let 10-year-olds play with handguns or 12-year-olds drive, why you shouldn't let your middle schoolers date, because you just don't know enough about life. You're going to hurt yourself or you're going to hurt somebody else. So you shouldn't be doing those things. You just don't have enough information and life experience to do them without hurting yourself or hurting other people. And as a parent, I'm not going to give a handgun to a kid. I'm not going to allow my 12-year-old to drive. And I'm not going to allow my middle schooler to date for those reasons. I don't care what everybody else is. I don't care if Johnny's parents, bought him a handgun or let him date. You're not going to do it because you don't have enough experience. And if you don't like that, I get to talk. That's the way this works. But we work through that, don't we? We don't keep all those things away from them indefinitely. We do it because we love them. That's what fathers and mothers do. We should know better. Notice emphasis on should. We should know better because we're the parents. How do we know better? Because we have the scars to show it, to prove it. Most of us, right? I did that and it didn't work for me, so please don't do it. Trust me. Those are famous parental words. Trust me. At that table that day, that young man was really sincere. He was passionate, but he was really ignorant. He had no idea what it was going to take to love that woman. Now, I think he had a lot of just manly, strength. I think he had a lot of resolve, and I think he was sincere, but he was sincerely unequipped. But there's another piece east of Eden, and that's rebellion. Rebellion is different than ignorance. Ignorance is I'm not really sure what's right or wrong, but I'm willing to listen because I want to learn. Rebellion is not that at all. Rebellion is, I know what I'm supposed to be doing, but you know what? I'm above all that. I'm above all that. I'm speaking this morning to people in church. Now, I don't know where you're all at, but I'm not speaking to a public seminar on health and marriage. I'm speaking to a group of church people who claim that Jesus can make a difference. So as I share this morning, I want you to keep that in mind. Because both ignorance and rebellion in my life have produced a lot of grief. And if we're honest, if we're going around a mountain and seem to be coming back to the same issues over and over, and they inflict pain on us over and over, we need to stop and ask ourselves, it's not the circumstances that are causing this. It's not because men are evil and women are confused or whatever it is. This is me. This is me. My upstream issue is I'm disconnected from the God of the gospel. And I want to say this morning that if you don't understand the gospel, it's almost impossible to understand what marriage is supposed to look like. It's almost impossible. Why is that? Because marriage is rooted in the gospel. It's rooted in the author of the gospel, Jesus. So as we get started this morning, Ephesians 5 says this, for this reason, this is actually Paul quoting all the way back into the book of Genesis, and then actually re-quoting Jesus himself, who spoke these words. We talked about this last week a little bit. A man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife. So a man, in all his distinctiveness and all of his design, leaves his home. And a woman with all of her unique design and attributes and so forth leaves her home, and the two come together. So these two individuals, according to this, become one. So you and he become us. And Paul says that thing, this oneness that he describes, he just says one flesh. He says it's a profound mystery. He's like, well, it is a mystery, but I'm talking about, and he ties this to the church. He says, I'm talking about Christ and the church. Now, I know we've all looked at the opposite sex and said, dude, you are a mystery. Like, I have no idea how you think, right? Or, you know what, honey, I want to help, but I have no idea what's going through your mind, right? I have no idea how to help you. It is a mystery. So that's not exactly the mystery he's talking about, but I think we've all had that sentiment, which is tied in here. Because we are so different, and this oneness thing, this two people coming together, is Paul said, here's the word mystery, maybe helps us understand. The word in the Greek is actually in front of the word mysterion, you could put mega. And you know like what are the mega savings or mega groceries? That's this. Mega mystery. It's not just a common mystery, it is a huge mystery. Some of your translations would say profound. It's really deep. Something confided only to the initiated. It's like a secret. Something that not laying around for mere mortals to get their minds around. Something not casually understood. It's something hidden inside the wisdom of God. That's what the word means. It's not like just a mystery movie. It's something that has been around for millennials, but it's been hidden inside the heart of God and the mind of God. And so that day in that coffee shop, the irony that I was trying to get them to see is you're trying to do something, which is love this woman and make her your wife and be one. You're trying to do something that is amazing, and I admire your sincerity and your passion, but you're trying to do it without understanding the author of the idea. Or maybe you do understand the author, but like in a place of rebellion, you just don't want to involve him because you're going to, like Frankie sang years ago, do it your way, right? And so Paul says, this thing is a mystery, man. So there's a lot of talk today. If you listen, even last week we mentioned that the number of marriages in North America are on the decline. Less people are getting married. And that's primarily in the millennial generation. That's if you want to listen to last week, you can pick up some of that. So divorce is actually on the decline. And we might say, well, that's great. Well, first of all, you have to be careful who you read and who you believe, because there's always going to be an ebb and flow of culture. But the fact is, listen, marriages are, according to a recent statistic, are a $60 billion a year industry in North America that employs close to 1 million people. The wedding business, $60 billion a year. And somewhere in there is yours, right? Your 10,000 is all added into that pot last year. $60 billion a year, employing over 900,000 people. So economically, weddings are around for a while. The other factor here is, and I don't have enough time to unpack it all, but there is huge amount of data out there. The data says, recent data all points to the same thing, and if sociologists are honest, they would publish it, but they don't because of political correctness and other things. Now, listen, if you're here this morning, you're a single parent, or a mom, just you're doing the best you can do with your kids. I truly, truly, truly admire you're a single parent because you're amazing. You're the most sleep-deprived people on the planet, right? And you are doing an amazing thing, the fact that you're here. But the stats say that children born under the umbrella of a mother and a father in a place of commitment in a marriage, not cohabitating, but where there's an actual marriage commitment, all the stats point to the fact that your child, your son or your daughter, is less likely to have run-ins with the police, is going to have a higher economic level throughout their lives, is going to be more likely to finish college, is going to have less mental health issues, is going to, and there is just this host. In fact, that slice of middle America, that child born under that covenant, under that covering, is going to be far more likely to achieve the American dream of just this normalcy and prosperity. In fact, broken homes are in the top 5 reasons, along with medical bankruptcy and other things, for economic disaster, economic poverty, poverty among children. And that spins off into government, that spins off into taxes, our economy. It spins off into a host of things. It's a fascinating read if you have a chance. So what I'm saying here is marriage matters. Whether we like it or not, whether we agree with it or not, marriage statistically and factually matters. Now, I also know that there's a lot of, this is a great, I put this in here because I like it so much. The Economist is a magazine. It's not known for its, God-positive, sort of kingdom-believing. It's pretty secular. Here's what they say. Marriage seems to encourage better behavior, healthier behavior. A single person is 13 percentage points more likely to give up smoking if he gets married than if he doesn't. What are they saying? Marriage, what he's saying is, marriage changes us, right? No, some of you guys have been eating out of frying pans for 2 and 3 years, right? And you've been just fine with it. You have no idea what's growing in that pan. You don't change your socks but once every 10 days. Things like that. Clean your house, every couple months, whether it needs it or not. That kind of a thing. And when you get married, it's like, no. These are plates. Look, these are plates, and we clean them or we throw them away after every meal, right? And so what it does is it literally, and they're saying, it actually helps you live a healthier life. Married people are in general, they have better health. It says they are more likely than unmarrieds to have preventative health checks across a range of conditions. 6% more likely to check their cholesterol, prostate, breast exam at the age of 50 to 54. So the next time your spouse nags you to go to the doctor, give thanks. Being married is good for your health. So there's this thing again of marriage matters, but historically, both Protestant and Catholic, the church has been the keeper of the idea. Historically, the churches, regardless of your background and persuasion, taught that marriage was about 2 people coming together in a place of mutual sacrifice for the benefit of all. 2 people laying their lives down for the benefit of this thing called family, what we just had up here on this stage. Financial sacrifice, emotional sacrifice, sexual sacrifice, sexual sacrifice, all those things for the benefit of the greater good. And not just the family, by the way, but for the entire society, for culture. The church recognized that if families were healthy, the culture was healthy. I just challenge you, look around at our culture today. There is a correlation between the disintegration of marriage and the impact it has on our school system, on our health system, on our culture, and every factor. So there's this cynicism that's come up. We look around and we go, you know what? It just seems like it's all drifting away. There's a quote by the author by the name of Timothy Keller. He wrote a book called The Meaning of Marriage. It's on our website as a recommended reading. He writes this: after the Enlightenment, the meaning of life came to be seen as the fruit of the individual to choose the life that most fulfills him or her personally. So this is just a few hundred years ago. Instead of finding meaning through self-denial and giving up one's freedom, binding oneself to the duties of marriage and family, marriage was redefined as finding emotional and sexual fulfillment and self-actualization. You hear what he's saying here? If you leave that up there, think about that. I encourage you to maybe just take that home with you or find it on our website. Those will be up on our site, the points. Because what he's saying is, again, earlier, marriage used to be about us, and now it's kind of about me. I kind of want us, but it's really about me. And so this pessimism has crept in, this kind of skepticism on the from a secular viewpoint of I don't know if marriage is relative anymore. I don't know if it works anymore. I don't know if is it really beneficial anymore? Can't we just live together? Can't I just have sex with who I want to have sex with? And then if the feeling runs out, then we call it good and we just sort of move on and we just look back and that was just one experience in our portfolio kind of a thing, right? Well, I think that sounds good, but I think in real life it doesn't work. I would bet if we could just do a little pain test or a pain indicator here that the casual relationships that maybe we've had in our lives, in the beginning, I'm sure there was some kind of hook of pleasure or sensation or sensuality or passion, but we didn't go away without being diminished. There's not more of us. We're not like, oh, I'm so much better because of that. No, we're diminished. We're wounded. We're torn up. We're broken. We have jagged edges in our souls. We're not enriched, we're diminished by casual. We were never designed for casual. We're designed for intimacy. And if you turn intimacy into casual, there's no winners. So coming into this, there's kind of two filters. If your parents, if you grew up here this morning in a stable marriage, in other words, the marriage that you observed growing up, everybody grew up observing something. So if you grew up in a stable family where your mom and dad kind of married 25, 30 years and you kind of watched that and, they kind of worked and this would have been my background. My dad was World War II vet, combat veteran, married their whole lives, same person. And their lives were pretty consistent. They had conflict, but it was never awful. It was never destructive. And they had their disagreements, but they hung with it until the day they died. In fact, on the day my father did die, I was in the room with him and we were gathered around and we thanked him for just being a dad. And he wasn't perfect. He was old school, didn't talk much, strict. But he said these words. He said, I was just doing my duty. Decades and decades of service to our family, and his whole thing was just summed up in, I was just doing my duty. I was just doing what everybody would do, right? Now, the funny thing is that if that's the marriage that you witnessed growing up, fast forward to 2016, and all of a sudden you find yourself in turmoil where your marriage is now, where your relationship is now, and that could kind of blow you out of the water because you're kind of thinking, man, I'm shocked because growing up it looked easy. What's this I've hit? What's this wall that I've seemed to have hit? And see what I'm saying? So we had this image going in. On the other hand, maybe your experience was growing up in a very difficult and painful marriage, in a difficult and painful environment in the home. And so you're already here in 2016 and you're well steeped in cynicism and fear and I'm not sure, you've already got your walls up and your distance up. And so when the going gets rough, it's almost instinct to just go out the back door. It's instinct to look around and make a plan B. You know what I'm talking about? It's like this instinct of, this isn't going to work. I saw it fail in my folks. I saw it fail in my sisters. A woman came up to me after the service last night. We're going to bring her into the panel. And on the Wednesday nights, and Sue, Jeff's wife, and she said, what you said is, she said, that's my life. My mom was married 4 times. My mom was married 4 times. Every one of my siblings has been married at least 3 times. Her entire family, she said, I'm the only one in my whole family that's been married to this guy for 20 or 34 years or whatever. And she said, it's only because we got saved a year before our marriage. We gave our lives to Jesus. She said, that's the only thing it's not because of strong will or just stick with it. So there's something going on there, right? We all have a filter. And so this cynicism that we have in our hearts, and it's interesting, our group here this morning, that I think I want to say a couple things and then see if it resonates with you. Number one is this, is kind of this, well, if marriage is, if so many marriages fail, then maybe it really doesn't work anymore. Maybe it has run its course. The institution, the idea has served its purpose and it's over now. I mean, really, if the divorce rate is somewhere around 40% or 37% or something like that, would you keep your cell phone company if 40% of your calls were dropped? Right? Would you stick with that restaurant that you get sick about, 1 out of 3 times you eat there, you get dysentery? I mean, you wouldn't stick with that, right? Right? Would you stick with a doctor who just let you down over and over again? We would just change, right? Everybody gets that. But the interesting thing is, even if that was true, you wouldn't stop going to doctors, you wouldn't stop using your cell phone, and you wouldn't stop eating out. You know why? Because we understand it works. I just need to find the right people to get it to work. Right? It works. It's just the people involved that keep letting me down. If you're frustrated with church this morning because it's let you down, I get that. So just find one that works for you, man, but don't use it as an excuse to bail. Well, I'm just going to do what I want to do now because it failed me, right? Because that's hypocrisy. You're not being honest. How important is honesty? I believe that maybe it failed. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. It means the people involved were either steeped in ignorance or rebellion. And there's an answer for that. The second reason people are pessimistic is they just can't seem to find their soulmate. So they've tried 1, 2, 3, 4 times. And they believe that somewhere out there is I just can't see. My picker is bad. My chooser is off, right? Picker, I said, right? It's like I can't seem to get it right. And so if I just found the right one, it would work. I realize I've been a little sarcastic when it comes to this particular subject, I've been told. Just a little bit, did you say? So, first of all, we have to ask ourselves, where does this idea come from? The idea of a soulmate. It's just like, and what it is we're looking for this person. When they did a survey of men and women of what are you looking for in a soulmate? You can read the survey, it's out there. But basically what they said was this: I want 2 things. My soulmate, we have to have sexual chemistry and we have to have compatibility. I want them to take me as I am. Don't try to change me. Isn't that interesting? So basically, I want to marry someone who's, Victoria's Secret model and a pilot for United and and she plays professional soccer on the side. and I want a guy who's going to heal all the things that are broken in my life. I mean, whatever those fantasy ideas are. And see, so that's our idea, according to a survey, of what we're looking for in a soulmate. And if I can just find that person and don't try to change me, take me as I am. And that's our culture today, right? Don't say I'm wrong about anything. Judging is the worst sin possible. But does that work in real life? Because real marriage life is about change. You guys that have been married 20 plus years, 25 years, I asked you this morning, are you has anything changed, in your life? Just start with using plates. Has your hygiene changed? Has your approach to finances changed? Has your temper changed? Listen, if you haven't changed, then something's wrong because marriage is designed to change us. And so what if we've got it backwards? What if marriage is about coming together, two people laying their lives down, two people coming together and dying to their singleness and all their desires outside of marriage and saying, we're going to live for the common good. And in doing that, I wake up one day and go, man, you are my soulmate. I have bonded to you because I've laid my life down for you. I'm going to tell you something. You tend to bond to what you lay your life down for. You tend to bond. And unless that happens, I believe the bond is very, very weak and superficial. We tend to bond. Who has not been through extremely tough times with somebody? Like difficult situations, trauma, tragedy. And afterwards you're like, dude, I'm here for you. You were there for me. So this commitment issue, especially, this is a Wednesday night piece, a little bit of a rabbit, but men, if you're wondering why your wife won't approach you, you need to ask yourself, man, because security driven, see, this female, she fears the most. The breakup always, the woman suffers more. The breakup is always on the shoulders of the woman, regardless of what was at fault. I'm not talking about blame here. I'm just talking about where the pain is the deepest, because that woman is so wired for security. You're so wired for faithfulness. You're so wired for when you make a commitment and that person is committed to you. And when you feel like this guy is not all in, there's this weird distance. There's this barrier that I described last week, this debris. And you wonder why she won't give herself to you. And you blame her. Could it be that we're looking for something in our soulmate that's only found in the gospel? So the third reason is, should love really be this hard? Should it be this hard? Should it be this hard? If the chemistry is right and we're attracted to one another and we're in love, wouldn't that be enough? I don't think so. We're body, soul, and spirit. So typically, our first attraction to the opposite sex is I believe, almost always physical. You're not at a wedding. Everybody's kind of been to a wedding, right? You're kind of, you know what I mean? You know what weddings are like. Single, and it's fine. And you're all right with single, but it would be great not to be single. And you're attracted to the opposite sex. So you're at the wedding, just this, your radar. You got your radar on, you're tuned in, and you see a beautiful person walk in the door, and you know what I mean by that. And your radar goes, you know what I mean? And in your brain, you are not going, oh man, I bet she has wonderful character. And when you're going to that wedding, do you stand in front of a mirror and when you're getting dressed, come on, and say, I'm just dressing for character today, baby. It's like, I'm just dressing for integrity today, right? And I'm not saying that's necessarily wrong. I think God has designed us visually. He's designed us to be attracted in all shapes and sizes, and we've got different tastes in male and female, and I think that's wonderful. Otherwise, he would have just made us all just blocks of wood or androids. We all look the same coming in, right? But he didn't do that. He designed us with all different shapes and sizes that is beautiful and attractive to you. I think that's a wonderful thing. Now, if you just took that and broke it into percentages, I would say that most people in the beginning, the attraction is probably 80%. And the emotional attraction is probably somewhere around 10 or 12. And the spiritual is probably about 6. Now, somewhere along the line, that progression moves on. Now, if you have absolutely no morals and you're ungodly, that's all you care about is the physical. And you just want to get in bed with that person. So you just go and you hit on them and you try to figure out how to get what you want. Scratch that itch, if you will. But if God's involved in your life at all, you're going to take that and you're going to love the whole person, body, soul, and spirit. And marriages that take off in the physical, they take off like a rocket. They're very strong and very passionate. And I get that. You're young. But there comes a time when if those other two elements, the emotional and the spiritual, do not come up to par, you're going to find yourself 40-some years old and things just don't work the way they used to. And you're going to be very disillusioned. So it's hard. Of course it's hard because it's more than just physical. So here's a It's kind of like if the chemistry is right. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team when he was playing the high school basketball. So you think about that, you think, well, it shouldn't be that hard. You're Michael Jordan. He was cut. It's one thing to have the genetics or the plumbing, but he had to shoot thousands and thousands and thousands of free throws every practice to be a champion. So if that counts for basketball, it counts in spades for marriage. Marriage is hard because it's complicated, because it's deep, because it's complex, because it takes a whole level of understanding and performance that's just beyond what we know naturally. And genetically, again, you could be, in background-wise, you could have seen good examples, but man, it's hard because it's deep. So here's some of the things I've heard over the years. Well, could it be that we're more in love, the reason it's hard, could it be that I'm more in love with the idea of marriage than with the person? In the Notebook, it just seems so natural. It just seems so, it just seemed easy. I just wept through the whole thing. Well, you know what that is? That's called a movie. And life is not a movie. You know why? Because a movie has got about an hour and 20 minutes, and the best of people are going to quit watching after that. But life goes on and on. Life goes on through times of extreme passion and sexuality and attraction, through low times of having children and bodies changing and sleepless nights and losing of jobs and hospital visits and in-laws and all kinds of stuff, right? Life is not a movie. And I think sometimes we're more in love with the idea than we are with the actual individual. And we embrace the idea. We cling to the idea. Could it be that no human being could ever possibly meet all my needs? Could it be that some of my relationship ideas, this person, this opposite sex person, I am wanting something from him or her that only Jesus could provide for me? I'm looking actually for redemption. He's gonna heal all my past hurts, or she's gonna keep me safe from porn. I'm just gonna marry this woman and commit to her, and we're gonna have a sex life, and I won't struggle with porn anymore. That is called idolatry. That is putting something on the altar that only Jesus can heal you from, save you from, and protect you from. He or she cannot be your salvation. Well, I never was much of the prayer, so I'm going to let my wife do the praying. She's the praying one in the family. Could it be that we look to sex and romance to give us what we used to get from faith in God? Identity. Oh man, identity. Oh, he's a player. Oh, she's a real, identity. God invented this stuff, this sexuality. He invented it. All the nerve-ending ideas, all the parts of your body that fit together were invented in the mind and the heart of God. But without involving the God of those ideas, what was meant to enhance and bless will just rip us to shreds and the people around you. If those things are given over to ignorance and selfishness and rebellion, they become weapons of war. Some of you married couples know exactly what I'm talking about. I'll punish you. I know how to make you suffer. You're not touching me. You better be very careful going down that road, because you open your marriage up to forces that I think you don't understand. When we use what was meant to bless each other, meant to enhance one another, we use them as weapons. Or we use them to get our own way, or to shape our identity, or to give us some measure of value. Man, in high school, we used to joke all the time, I'll trade you sex for love, and love for sex. I'll say that I love you if you give me sex, and I'll give you sex if you say, what are we doing? We're just scratching this weird emotional itch that we have that only God can fulfill. Could it be the reason for this marriage is challenging because it's scripted? The idea we have is scripted, like I mentioned earlier. Or could it be that it's really about forming a new identity? And I want to kind of finish up here. A guy by the name of Stanley Horace, Duke University, writes these words. He says, we never really know who we marry, we just think we do. Even if we first marry the right person, just give it a while and they'll change. For marriage, being the enormous thing that it is, means we're not the same person after we've entered in. The primary challenge of being married is learning how to love and care for the stranger to whom you find yourself married. Well, that's just so true. I mean, I knew my wife before we were married. I knew my wife in the first year, but every year we changed. And I had to adjust and go, wait a minute. Now, I mean, sometimes that knowing comes from the knowing. You know what I mean? There's nothing like a marriage commitment where when you're dating, you can hide some really gnarly stuff. We all know that, right? I'm just going to show you the good side of me. But when you move in together and stop playing house, you actually really begin to know one another. And that can be almost shocking sometimes. What? You know? And boy, I've seen some really shocking things that people have discovered. But what he's describing here is not just that. It's far more. He's describing that life changes us and we're not the same people. Statistically, researchers tell us that in premarital counseling, you can only know about 20% of what they're going to know in the future. In that moment of counseling, you're 25 years old. I'm going to kind of talk about backgrounds and what you think and philosophy and faith. But after that, if you come back in 10 years, this is going to be a totally different conversation. You know why? Because you've changed. It has changed you. Children have changed you. Body and hormones have changed you. Tragedy has changed you. And now I have to get to know the new you all over again. You hear what he's saying there? And that takes sacrifice. The entire flow of the New Testament is about this dynamic, not static, this dynamic relationship with following Jesus. Gary Thomas, in his book, another book on our website I would highly recommend, called Sacred Marriage, the byline says this: what if God designed marriage to make us holy more than make us happy? Now, don't trip over the word holy, but I guarantee you that if you're out and your search in life is to be happy, you're going to have neither. You're going to have neither. Because in your search for happiness, you are going to be baited into all kinds of artificial things that promise to provide your happiness. And you will be neither happy or holy. Now, the word holy really just means set apart. It doesn't have anything necessarily to do in this thing with what you smoke or drink, whatever. But what it's talking about is something sacred. That this marriage, this relationship I have with the opposite sex, this is a sacred thing. Man, this is set apart. This is like no other. We have built the fences around our lives, and man, we enjoy each other in every way. And that's true intimacy. You see, God has shaped us that nothing can tear us apart. That's holiness. That's oneness that Paul's describing. And that doesn't come easy. So Paul says this in the book of Ephesians in chapter 4. Now track with me here as we wrap up. I tell you this, and I insist on it in the Lord. You must no longer live as the Gentiles do in the futility of their thinking. Now, he's talking about godless people. Remember, I started this morning with this idea that I'm not talking to non-church people here. I'm talking to, for the most part, people that you've been raised in church. Or you're the first generation believer, but you're trying to be a follower of Jesus. Paul says, those people are futile in their thinking, and they're darkened in their understanding. Remember I said, ignorance. They're separated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them due to the hardening of their hearts. Having lost all sensitivity. I would like to put a synonym in there, if you allow me. Having lost their conscience. They have no more conscience. They've given themselves over to sensuality, to indulge in every kind of impurity with an insatiable lust for more. I want to just stop there. I fellowship with the pastors that are in this town, not everyone, but quite a few. There's probably 20 of us that get together twice a month. If I could bring 10 of those guys up here on this stage right now, they would tell you that immorality is epidemic in the church. It is rampant in the church. The people who should know better are bound by porn and fantasy, and they sleep around just like a godless world. And Paul says, that's not how you came to know Christ. Wait a minute, did you forget how you got into this? That's not how you came to know Christ. That's not how this started. You came to know Him. You came into this relationship with Him because you were taught in accordance with the truth. You were taught with regard to your former way of life to put the old man away, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your mind, and to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. Hear what he's saying there? He was saying, listen, if you're going to understand the gospel, there's got to be a death in the family. And that death is that old man that is just living for sensuality, living to scratch some itch. He's saying, that's the world that I took you out of. If you're going to understand the mystery of marriage, you have to have lived and experienced the mystery of the gospel, or it'll never come. The mystery of the gospel is that somebody has to die. And in dying, there's a resurrection, and there's no resurrection until the death. In the natural, I'm not going to move that direction. I don't want to die. Jesus said, no problem. I'll go first. But if you're going to follow me, I'm not going to have intimacy with two beings. I'm not going to have intimacy with your old man and intimacy with the new man. Somebody has to die. What better place than in a marriage relationship where two people come together and they say, you know what? There's going to be an opportunity where one of us is going to have to die, and it's going to have to become a habit in our lives. And as that habit develops, you find resurrection life. I could bring up here couples. I don't care. I'm not trying to make light. I'm not trying to be sensational, but you tell me your awful story and I'll top your story. I'll top your story. I promise you. I will bring somebody up here that has gone farther down the rabbit hole and made far worse mistakes and have done everything they can to wreck it. And by the gospel, not by just counseling or good ideas or hey, I'm going to love this woman, I'm going to kick this habit. No. By the power of the gospel, they have come back and lived to tell about it, and they're better than they ever were. I could bring them on the stage. So don't sit here this morning and think, well, I've just gone too far, or because you have to check, man, what is the condition of my heart? Have I lost sensitivity? I was raised in church. Have I lost the faith of the power of the gospel? Because if you have, and you're attempting marriage, I want to ask you to stop. I want to ask you to really stop and examine your heart. Because like that young man that day in that coffee shop, you may have good intentions, you may be sincere, but man, somebody's going to get hurt and pay the price for that ignorance or that rebellion. You can only hide so long. God will not be mocked. The principles belong to him. And I cannot bend the principles to fit my convictions. So I beg you this morning. Here's the questions we're going to leave you with that we have been doing the last few weeks. So what do I do with this? Regarding marriage and dating, my relationship with the opposite sex, would you say that you relate to the opposite sex through a biblical framework that I'm describing here this morning? Or do I pick and choose what suits my circumstance or my likes, my dislikes? And on top of that, could you articulate that to somebody? If someone watched you and watched your sexual sacrifice, your ability to just say, no, I resist that. I mean, my flesh is attracted to that, but I'm going to say no because of my future and because God is worthy. Could you actually articulate that? Or would somebody just say you're crazy? You're a freak. The second question is this. If repentance means to change my mind, is there a place God's calling me to change in order to live well? Not just for my own sake, but for those who will be around me and come after me. You know, the characteristic of sin is it's always short-sighted. I'm blinded to what this is going to cost me and cost other people around me. My future. The third question is this. Are there struggles that I find in my life that are chronic? And this is the last one, that are chronic. What I mean by that is I just seem to always come back to the same place. And I'm having the same conversations with Pastor Jason or Pastor Bruce. I'm having the same issues all the time. Could it be tied to either there's something I don't understand and I'm honest about that and I'm going to try to fix that, or that I really know but I just not going to change. I'm going to wait for God to change. I leave it with you. Listen, God is for you. God is so for you. But he's God and I'm not. So as we finish, we're going to take just a couple minutes. I want to just take like 90 seconds here and just let God speak to you what he will this morning.